I'm reading Answer to Job by C.G. Jung, paragraph 600. Unconsciousness has an animal nature. Like all old gods, Yahweh has his animal symbolism with its unmistakable borrowings from the much older theriomorphic gods of Egypt, especially Horus and his 4 sons. Of the 4 animals of Yahweh, only one has a human face. That is probably Satan, the godfather of man as a spiritual being. Ezekiel's vision attributes 3/4 animal nature and only 1/4 human nature to the animal deity, while the upper deity, the one above the sapphire throne, merely had the likeness of a man. This symbolism explains Yahweh's behavior, which from the human point of view is so intolerable. It is the behavior of an unconscious being who cannot be judged morally. Yahweh is a phenomenon, and, as Job says, not a man. Footnote: the naive assumption that the creator of the world is a conscious being must be regarded as a disastrous prejudice, which later gave rise to the most incredible dislocations of logic. For example, the nonsensical doctrine of the privatio boni would never have been necessary had one not had to assume in advance that it is impossible for the consciousness of a good God to produce evil deeds. Divine unconsciousness and lack of reflection, on the other hand, enable us to form a conception of God which puts his actions beyond moral judgment and allows no conflict to arise between goodness and beastliness. Paragraph 601. One could, without too much difficulty, impute such a meaning to Job's speech. Be that as it may, Yahweh calmed down at last. The therapeutic measure of unresisting acceptance had proved its value yet again. Nevertheless, Yahweh is still somewhat nervous of Job's friends. They have not spoken of me what is right. The projection of his double complex extends, comically enough, one must say, to these respectable and slightly pedantic old gentlemen, as though God knows what depended on what they thought. But the fact that men should think at all, and especially about him, is maddeningly disquieting and ought somehow to be stopped. It is far too much like the sort of thing his vagrant son is always springing on him, thus hitting him in his weakest spot. How often already has he bitterly regretted his unconsidered outbursts? Paragraph 602. One can hardly avoid the impression that omniscience is gradually drawing near to a realization and is threatened with an insight that seems to be hedged about with fears of self-destruction. Fortunately, Job's final declaration is so formulated that one can assume with some certainty that for the protagonists, the incident is closed for good and all. Paragraph 603. We, the commenting chorus on this great tragedy, which has never at any time lost its vitality, do not feel quite like that. For our modern sensibilities, it is by no means apparent that with Job's profound obeisance to the majesty of the divine presence and his prudent silence, a real answer has been given to the question raised by the satanic prank of a wager with God. Job has not so much answered as reacted in an adjusted way. In so doing, he displayed remarkable self-discipline, but an unequivocal answer has still to be given. Paragraph 604. To take the most obvious thing, what about the moral wrong Job has suffered? Is man so worthless in God's eyes that not even a tort morale can be inflicted on him? That contradicts the fact that man is desired by Yahweh, and that it obviously matters to him whether men speak right of him or not. He needs Job's loyalty, and it means so much to him that he shrinks at nothing in carrying out his test. This attitude attaches an almost divine importance to man, for what else is there in the whole wide world that could mean anything to one who has everything? Yahweh's divided attitude, which on the one hand tramples on human life and happiness without regard, and on the other hand must have man for a partner, puts the latter in an impossible position. At one moment, Yahweh behaves as irrationally as a cataclysm. The next moment, he wants to be loved, honored, worshipped, and praised as just. He reacts irritably to every word that has the faintest suggestion of criticism, while he himself does not care a straw for his moral code if his actions happen to run counter to its statutes. Paragraph 605. One can submit to such a God only with fear and trembling, and can try indirectly to propitiate the despot with unctuous praises and ostentatious obedience. But a relationship of trust seems completely out of the question to our modern way of thinking. Nor can moral satisfaction be expected from an unconscious nature God of this kind. Nevertheless, Job got his satisfaction without Yahweh's intending it, and possibly without himself knowing it, as the poet would have it appear. Yahweh's allocutions have the unthinking yet nonetheless transparent purpose of showing Job the brutal power of the demiurge. Quote, "This is I, the creator of all the ungovernable, ruthless forces of nature, which are not subject to any ethical laws. I, too, am an amoral force of nature, a purely phenomenal personality that cannot see its own back." Unquote. Paragraph 606. This is, or at any rate could be, a moral satisfaction of the first order for Job, because through this declaration, man, in spite of his impotence, is set up as a judge over God himself. We do not know whether Job realizes this, but we do know from the numerous commentaries on Job that all succeeding ages have overlooked the fact that a kind of Moira or dike rules over Yahweh, causing him to give himself away so blatantly. Anyone can see how he unwittingly raises Job by humiliating him in the dust. By so doing, he pronounces judgment on himself and gives man the moral satisfaction whose absence we found so painful in the book of Job. Paragraph 607. The poet of this drama showed a masterly discretion in ringing down the curtain at the very moment when his hero gave unqualified recognition to the demiurge by prostrating himself at the feet of his divine majesty. No other impression was permitted to remain. An unusual scandal was blowing up in the realm of metaphysics, with supposedly devastating consequences, and nobody was ready with a saving formula which would rescue the monotheistic conception of God from disaster. Even in those days, the critical intellect of the Greek could easily have seized on this new addition to Yahweh's biography and used it in his disfavor, as indeed happened, though very much later. Footnote: Gnostic interpretation of Yahweh as Saturn in transformation symbolism in the Mass, paragraph 350. Aeon, paragraph 128. So as to mete out to him the fate that had already overtaken the Greek gods. But a relativization of God was utterly unthinkable at that time and remained so for the next 2,000 years. Paragraph 608. The unconscious mind of man sees correctly even when conscious reason is blind and impotent. The drama has been consummated for all eternity. Yahweh's dual nature has been revealed, and somebody or something has seen and registered this fact. Such a revelation, whether it reached man's consciousness or not, could not fail to have far-reaching consequences.